living at a pivotal point in human history. Almost 2 centuries we have relied on coal and then oil, then more recently on natural gas. So now we have to make the transition to a new energy system. It's going to be as fundamental as the changes that took place during the first industrial revolution. So I think it's critically important for a good university with an international footprint to take these issues on in a serious way.
India is home to the second largest population in the world. It's going to be the country where the largest set of young people live. Many of us think that this is a country where a lot of the world's economic growth is going to come in the future. We're likely to also see many of the costs, especially on the environment, being increasingly borne by India in the next 2 decades. And for all these reasons, India becomes an incredibly important player when we start thinking about how do we protect human health and how do we deal with climate change.
The transportation sector faces really substantial challenges in terms of transitioning to a low GHG future, and we don't know what that future is going to look like. But I think that biofuels could play a potentially an important role, especially an important role in the transition. And so the challenge that we're looking at in our project is how to facilitate low GHG biofuels and their use in the transportation sector.
I think we're used to thinking about climate change in terms of averages, right? Global warming is the phrase. But increasingly, we're finding evidence to believe that actually it's the change part of climate change that matters more than the warming part of global warming. Most of the damages come from a few extreme events. Climate change is an economic competitiveness issue, that it will affect economic growth. The economic aspects of climate change are crucial in thinking through, right, what are the costs and benefits? How much should we as a society be willing to invest in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions?
Most scientists believe strongly that CO2 is altering our Earth system. What the artificial leaf does is it stores renewable energy, wind and sunlight, in the form of a fuel. You just drop it in water and sunlight hits it, and off one side comes hydrogen and off the other side comes oxygen. So it really is like a leaf. It doesn't have gears and it's not a heavily engineered system. Instead of having a gas station, you could have a solar gas station.
One of the main problems that we see is that these extreme heat events really pose a threat to some of the people living in buildings that are not designed to deal with these temperature levels. So what we want to do with our research is use sensors that characterize indoor environmental quality and biometrics on people. So we can also think of ways of recommending changes to the built environment and behavioral choices that people can do to adapt better to these conditions.
We use an enormous amount of oil, pesticides, fertilizers, water, other resources to make food. And when we're throwing away somewhere around 40% of that food, that means 40% of those inputs are just being wasted. One of the big areas we've worked on is around date labels: sell by, use by, enjoy by, born on, packed on, which cause many people to throw something away because they think it's going to be unsafe, when in fact it has nothing to do with safety. And then on the back end of that, the food that winds up in landfills actually is a huge contributor to methane emissions, which is a really potent greenhouse gas.
Harvard's important role in climate change is it has all the pieces. So you have the government piece, the policy piece, the law piece, the business piece, but the piece that's most exciting for me is the solution piece, which is the science, engineering, discovery piece. So when you get to Harvard, they have the full card deck.
The entire debate on climate change has often focused on questions relating to what are the facts, but then more importantly, even if we want to address this problem, how do we go about doing it? Understanding how in countries which are seeing fast growth but have weak institutions, how you can implement good policies is to think about how do you change human behavior by giving them incentives. And getting an answer to these implementation issues, I think, is going to be critical in implementing any climate change policies.
We're trying to make policy on a 50 to 100-year timescale, something that we really haven't done before as a civilization. And so being able to clarify even small patches, right, of the shroud of uncertainty that surrounds this issue is a hugely valuable task that places like Harvard are uniquely well positioned to tackle.